We do have two very wonderful guests tonight that we're going to go into right now. We have Rukshan Fernando and Topher Field, Rukshan better known as Real Rukshan. And we'd like to welcome Rukshan and Topher onto Liberty Chat.
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. As well, I mean, you're both rather celebrities these days.
The funny thing about being a celebrity is that you don't decide that you're a celebrity. It's everyone else that decides that. If that's what right. You guys have decided, then that's great. But look, I just do what I do. And Rukshan, I'm sure you feel the same way.
Well, I definitely feel the same way.
Turning up with a big cigar, I think that makes you
that's pretty based.
This is my security blanket. I can't do interviews without one.
Now, I'm sure that most people listening and watching tonight are very aware of the two of you, but just very briefly, I just want to ask you individually, where did you come from? Not biologically, but how did you end up in this position where you've become quite huge independent journalist? We'll start with you, Topher.
Sure. So I started 12 years ago. I began actually on a bit of a dare that my cousin gave me. I did a video about the water situation. We were at stage 3A water restrictions during the Millennium Drought. I did a video about why the desal plant was a bad idea and we should be building a dam on the Mitchell River instead. It was an application to an ABC TV show. They naturally didn't select me for the show because obviously my politics weren't correct. I wanted to build a dam. So I was left with this video that I'm like, well, what do I do with that? So I started someone just said in the chat, Andrew Williams said the little government that can. No, long before that, my friend, long before that. I had this video. I had nothing left to do with it. So I started a brand new YouTube channel and stuck it on there and thought my mum would watch it and that would be about it. And people just began to share it amongst themselves and one thing led to another. And there I was doing a second video, a fifth video, a 20th video. And then of course, when COVID kicked off, all of a sudden I sort of gained, I guess, a level of traction. Like I said, you know, it's true. You don't decide whether you're a celebrity or not. You don't decide whether you're an influencer or not. It's other people that decide that on your behalf. And other people seemed to decide that they liked what I had to say and wanted to hear more of it. And all of a sudden, here I am.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the work that you did on all the Murray-Darling stuff like that was huge. And there were really no other journalists doing anything like that. It was really quite incredible what you did there. Thank you. Rukshan, what about yourself? So we all know that you were a wedding photographer, obviously affected by lockdowns. Give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my journey. But I think this is my lockdown hobby, independent journalism. So
well, it's better than putting on weight, which is what most of us did. So, you know.
Well, yeah. Some people took on cooking at home and so forth, and I took up making memes and doing independent journalism. So it really started from doing the memes and just kind of engaging politically through that kind of, I guess, the creative stuff through that. And then, you know, eventually I ended up hitting the street, doing some street journalism and capturing what was happening in my city. And yes, as a business owner, it was impacting me as well. So I had a vested interest in what was going on in my city. So, and then one thing kind of led to another. And it's all kind of happened very organically for me in terms of what I'm doing. And I can echo a lot of what Topher said as well. So, you know, I'm not necessarily going out there looking for people to, follow me and all this kind of stuff. I'm more just putting out the work, capturing what's happening, creating the content, and people seem to really there seems to be a need for that in the community, and I think that's what's been a part of, if I can term what I'm doing as being a success, that's what's been a part of it. I think just the need for that kind of content and the videos that I'm doing during this time.
And I think that's part of the real difference, and what I was thinking earlier, like the difference between what both of you gentlemen are doing and comparing that with mainstream media. Like we can see the views that you get on your live stream is really quite incredible. The mainstream media get nothing like that, and all the money that they pour into that, but also just the reception that you get from the people at these rallies and protests. People love you. Like everyone's trying to get on the camera. Everyone wants a photo with you. And there has been some attacks on mainstream journalists, which is not good, and no one would condone any of that. But it just shows the level of distrust that people have for mainstream news, because you just can't even watch it half the time. And And with what you're doing, you're not even giving any commentary. All you're doing is really just filming everyone, listening to people. You're not making any giving any biased opinions on it. Now, John's been to some of the rallies and protests up in Sydney, and obviously there's different journalists that are appearing up there as well. And what are your thoughts on the comparison now and the rise of these independent journalists, John?
Well, can I say Rukshan and Topher are pretty famous in Sydney too. I promise you that. I mean, a lot of people talk about them. Look, it's a different situation in Sydney. This time next week, our Premier has told us that we are going to be, all people, including the unvaxxed, are going to be given pretty much total freedom. Look, there wasn't a huge difference in terms of the policy between Gladys Berejiklian and Dan Andrews, but the difference was, I mean, it was worse in Victoria, but Dan Andrews seemed to enjoy it. He seemed to relish the oppression he was giving to people, whereas Gladys, who I'm not a fan of, who I don't think is that bright, she's overrated, but she always did seem a bit sort of, concerned about it. So, look, let's hope like hell that this is a huge positive for the internet, that we can have these genuinely popular people like Rukshan and Topher genuinely build a real audience, not through nothing but talent and nothing but sort of incisive comments and gutsy journalism. Let's hope that this is the way of the future. The only thing that could stop it is if it's sort of like crushed by commercial interests. But look, so far, I think this is just the beginning of an exciting new industry that can hopefully replace the corporate media.
They can't stop us. The corporate interests in the media can't stop us. This is too organic, too genuine. Yes. Now, I want to say for the record, I'm a massive fan of Rukshan's. I fangirled the first time we really actually kind of met properly. But Rukshan, I do have a bit of a bone to pick with you. I'm very jealous about the fact that you've been carried on people's shoulders. You were carried in the crowd. And that's never going to happen to me unless I lose about 40 kilograms first.
Yes, you're a rather tall man. Yes.
So you've got that on me, and I will never get that back. But look, I think he deserved it, and I'm a big fan of your work, and as you know, I genuinely believe Rukshan became the most important person. Particularly, there was a particular inflection point as we hit the CFMEU protests here in Melbourne. Rukshan's getting 150,000 people on his feed. Channel 7 is getting 2,000 people watching. Correct. There was a hunger to see the truth of what was really going on. And when Rukshan is walking around after the Federal Labor Party came out and said it was a bunch of Nazi babies or whatever, and Rukshan's walking up to people going, "Oh, are you a Nazi baby?" That work was phenomenal and incredibly important. And Rukshan, I genuinely believe that you changed the way that the mainstream media report on us now. They are less aggressive against us, and they are somewhat more honest than they used to be. And I believe that it was you that made that difference right in the middle of all those protests.
Well, and even the reach that Rukshan gets, and this is why David Limbrick actually invited Rukshan to his Senate candidate announcement, because we know there's no point asking a whole bunch of mainstream media. They're not going to care. They're not going to care. Within a couple of hours, Rukshan's stream, I noticed, was about 140,000 views within less than 2 hours. That's incredible. For a minor political party Senate candidate announcement, we would never get that on mainstream media. There is a question here, Rukshan, from Andrew saying, can you do a video on your lighting? It's amazing.
I use Philips Hue lighting, and I don't know if you've seen them. You can get it from Officeworks, and just a few key lights. But obviously, like compared to all you guys, I've paid a bit of attention to my setup here because that's my field of work, video. So I've gone all out. I'm not trying to outdo you guys.
Hey, my setup took a lot of work. It took me a week to get through that bottle and another week to get through that bottle, and that took me a couple of weeks. I mean, that's a lot of work right there. I've
got a Christmas decoration now. I'm going all Christmassy now. So thank you very much. Now, we also know, Rukshan, that you are a Trump-loving white supremacist, apparently. And I know that you've sort of been following politics somewhat beforehand. And I know that John Ruddick is very keen to talk about Trump and the American elections at all times. And I know Topher's very well informed as well. What are your thoughts, perhaps, on the next American election?
Yeah, look, I think it's shaping up to be one of the most, I guess, pivotal elections of our time, especially the way it looks like if Trump will actually rerun for the election. So I think it's going to be, the election that stops the world, possibly. Everyone's going to pay attention to what's happening there. And, the way that Joe Biden's been running the country, it's very obvious that there are lots of issues there. And I think we're going to see, a spectacle come in the next few months. Even it might start. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I might even actually go to America this time around that time and try to live stream some of the stuff that's going on there. Let's see.
Yes. Actually, Topher, Adam says here, I would have carried you, but you have put on a bit of weight during lockdown.
Actually, I wish I could blame lockdown. I've put on a bit of weight since I got married. That was the real turning point for me.
Yeah,
but
love does that.
I'm going to blame lockdown because it makes me look less bad. I was in the US in 2016, just before the presidential election that Trump won. And I came back here, and my wife and I, both of us, were absolutely certain that Trump was going to win. When you were on the ground over there, it was very, very obvious. Now, temper that with the fact that I also thought Trump was going to win in 2020, and I was wrong about that one. We can argue about whether that was genuine or not, but in the end, the way it ran, I was wrong about that one. But I did pick the 2016 election, and there is something about being on the ground. And Rukshan, if you can get there, something about being on the ground that gives you a finger on the pulse that you just cannot get from the other side of the world.
Yes. Well, there's actually another comment here from Peter, who says people are coming to realise that what the mainstream media is presenting as truth is not meshing with what they're seeing, hearing and experiencing. It's little wonder that independent media is growing in significance, and hence the importance of both of you gentlemen here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I mean, one of the things that I do is that it's so simple. I just go out there and hit record on the camera, and it's not hard to do.
Yes.
So these networks that have so much funding, they have the journalists, the reporters on the ground that can do this. They choose not to. They choose rather to involve themselves in creating certain narratives that mesh with whatever thing that they want to push out to the public. Whereas what I'm doing is just showing people for who they are. And whatever's happening there is happening. And I think people kind of gravitate towards that more because it's actually real. It's the real world that we live in.
Yes.
And, I think there's value in showing reality. And I think this live streaming that's happening all around the world, especially during this COVID pandemic time, we're seeing footage coming from live streamers and mobile phones rather than the media that's actually telling the story of what's happening. And, it's a very interesting space for us to be in the West, where we're getting stuff from mobile phones and live streams rather than the media. That's normally what you'd get from like China or North Korea. We'd get a video leaked of something that's happening. That's what's happening in Australia and England and in America right now. We're getting these leaked videos almost of things that are going on in the countries. And it's just very interesting time to be alive.
Well, there's that great expression. It used to be that the media told you what happened and you had to decide what to think. Now the media tells you what to think and you have to decide whether it actually happened.
Correct.
I love Peter Clay's comment here. Rukshan takes things out of context by showing everything unedited. Thanks, Media Watch. So I would describe Rukshan as a journalist because he does exactly what he just said. He points a camera, he hits record, he hits stream, and the world can see it and make up their own mind. I'm one of the bad guys in the sense that I would describe myself as a commentator. I'm not going out live and journaling and documenting in real time what's happening. I'm taking what comes to me from people like Rukshan and many others that are doing incredible work, along with what comes out of the mainstream media and press releases from political parties, etc. And I try and make sense of it and then sit down with my audience on a slow chat or in an interview or whatever it may be and kind of decipher and understand it. And I would add a third person into this, and apologies, he's not universally popular, but Avi, who I personally, the few times I've met him, I actually quite like him. I would describe him as a reporter. He's out there putting a microphone under other people's mouths and saying, tell me what you think. And so each of us, Avi, Rukshan, and myself, have fallen into very different roles, just naturally, organically, because that's what we wanted to do, and have actually, without meaning to, really created a real kind of nexus, a network, unofficial network of news sources that really does start to cover the gamut of journalistic disciplines and offer an alternative view to people that want it.
Exactly. And Scott actually says real Rukshan versus Tim Pool, like when you're in the US. What besides Liberty Chat, obviously, which podcast would you actually like to be on when you go to the US next year, Rukshan?
Well, I am
Besides
a big fan
Joe
of Tim
Rogan.
Pool. Tim Pool, and there's a few others I follow from America: Jack Posobiec, Mike Cernovich, and of course Candace Owens.
Yes.
But yeah, there's lots of great, conservative commentators within the US who are doing great things, and I think it's amazing that we're kind of getting that same kind of podcast culture here in Australia as well.
Yes.
And a lot more kind of conservative voices as well popping up and talking, and I think it's a great thing, and I'm really enjoying all the content that I'm seeing and all the new creators and stuff that are coming on board and people being politically engaged. It's been amazing to see in Australia, because for a long time a lot of that kind of people discussing whether it's freedom or liberty, whatever it is, has been coming from the United States, and to see it happening here a lot more as well, especially from the younger generation, it's amazing to see.
Well, you can do a real media blitz once you're over there. That'll be really quite interesting. Once again, there's a lot more comments in here as well. Adam says Nick Holt is a good local podcast. I don't actually know that one. Do either of you know Nick Holt?
No, I don't actually.
I think he's in Brisbane. Yeah,
I did an interview with him today. He's got a very big following. He's got a professional little setup. He interviewed Miranda Devine a week ago about her new book.
Okay.
So look, he's a good guy to be. He's a true believer, so he's definitely worth taking some interest in.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot of comments here saying he's on Twitter and great on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, whilst the two of you are here again, I'll ask a question here from Gary, who says, why is the mainstream media not inquiring about who gave the order to open fire on unarmed people who pose no threat to the police? And that's obviously something that the two of you saw at the protest when it was still illegal to protest, but nothing from mainstream media about that.
The mainstream media, in my opinion, have backed themselves into a corner where to actually start asking those hard questions involves them having to admit that they were part of the problem. They were championing the government's overreaction. Yeah. And to turn around now and start asking the hard questions of the government about some of those overreactions, that's going to come back to haunt them. So they just kind of want to move on. We do see the media changing their narrative and acknowledging new realities as we go forward, but never in the context of going back and admitting they were wrong. Never in the context of really challenging the powers that be that made the decisions in the past. It's all very in the real time. It's that 1984 perpetual present. They're never willing to look back into the past, in my opinion.
That's right. And there's a comment here from Melissa who says, it has shocked and dismayed me how many people didn't care when the police were shooting the protesters. Yeah, that was pretty disgusting. Now, another question here, because we've got two Sydney-siders on our panel, but we've got two Melbourneites here in our guest list. I'll ask this question here. This is slightly related, but what's the take on the Victor Labor's internal conflict over the last week or so?
Pass the popcorn.
And Rukshan. Yeah, pass the popcorn.
Rukshan, what do you reckon?
Oh, look, I haven't really been following it, to be honest. I've just been too busy going to rallies every single day in Melbourne, in Victoria. I've just been focusing on doing that. I haven't focused on the Labor shenanigans, but I think Topher's a bit more versed in this.
Look, Rukshan does the real work. I get to sit back at home and just digest information. I live on social media. It's the laziest living you can possibly imagine. Look, we've got a situation where last I heard 7 Labor MPs have already said they're not running for re-election, and a further 7 Labor MPs are expected to not get their pre-selection. So they're already sitting Labor MPs. And by default, normally, if you're a sitting MP, they're going to kind of pre-select you most of the time by default automatically, not always. To have 7 on top of the 7 that have said they're not going to run is a pretty extraordinary thing. And they've come out and already said, hey, if some of them have, if we don't get pre-selected, we are going to resign and force a by-election. Now, can I say this? Number 1, pass the popcorn. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be great viewing. Number 2, this is a huge opportunity for the Liberal Democrats. If there is a by-election forced in this manner, it is going to be messy, it is going to be ugly, and it is a huge opportunity for someone like Liberal Democrats where you don't have the resources, I should say we now, because I'm a member now, we don't have the resources to necessarily blanket the entire state the way that other parties do, but we can blanket a single electorate. If there is a by-election, we can run a really good ground game in that one by-election and really, really give them a fright. Could we snatch a seat? I don't know. But can we give them a scare? Definitely.
Yes, exactly.
Are these 7 resignations and 7 pre-selections under threat? Are we talking about federal Labor or state Labor?
This is state Labor. So 7 Labor MPs have already announced that they're not going to recontest their seat at the next election. And it was leaked to the Herald Sun that apparently there's another 7 because of factional infighting within the Labor Party, Victorian Labor Party. There's another 7 that are not going to get their pre-selection. And some of them have come out and said, if that happens, we are immediately resigning and forcing a by-election. It's brilliant. That smile on Kirsty's face. That's it. I've
been following diligently Voice of Victoria. She is excellent at putting everything
Emily's amazing.
In a too long didn't read version. She is so good at putting all those little clips together. It's been fantastic. And yes, who needs to watch reality TV? It's all happening right here in Victoria right now. Now, guys, I'm going to let you go unless there's anything else you want to say. We also want to know, like, how can we support you? Because there actually was one question from a gentleman earlier who said we can buy Topher's shirts. How can we support Rukshan? Please shill for yourselves right now. How do we follow you? How do we support you?
Rukshan, you go. Come on, man. How do we help you?
Look, I mean, right now, for me,
book a wedding. Book a wedding photographer. Yes.
Book a wedding. Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be. Well, not fortunate. I'm supporting myself. But the thing for me was when I started doing all this, I knew that I'd eventually have to go back to my business as a wedding photographer, wedding videographer, director of a company. So, I have to find that balance between doing this type of, live streaming or political work, whatever it is, journalism, and doing my everyday business. And I really wanted to find, my balance. And once I find that balance, I think, if I need support or help from the people that follow me and like my work and enjoy my work, I will definitely, ask for that at that time. But at present, I really wanted to just make sure that I was in it for the right reasons and in it for the long run as well. I didn't want to just kind of do this stuff during the, this crazy time in our lives during the pandemic and then disappear forever. It's something that I'd like to do long term. So I really want to just kind of get myself in that right frame of mind. So at the present, there's no way to support me besides following me. So please follow my work on Facebook at The Real Rukshan, on YouTube at The Real Rukshan, Twitter, Telegram, and Instagram. And that's the best way to support me, just by following my work, sharing my work, commenting, doing all that kind of stuff. That really kind of, that's what motivates me in terms of continuing to do my work, that people are still engaging with what I'm doing. And in the future, if I want to make T-shirts and, start a T-shirt factory like Topher, I'll turn to Topher for some advice.
Well, I tell you what, Rukshan,
figure out how to do the T-shirts.
I think we need to get you on our fundraising team, because there are so many comments in here going, how do we give Rukshan money? How do we give him money? What's his business name?
Can I chip in on that, Kirsty?
We need you on our fundraising committee. Thanks very much, Rukshan. And Topher, how do we
can I chip in on that? Look, I've been doing this for 12 years. For 11 years, I took the same approach as what Rukshan is talking about here. I didn't feel comfortable. It just didn't feel right to me that people were supporting me financially. I did raise money for specific projects. I was comfortable with that. This money goes to that project. And yes, I paid myself something out of each of those projects, although I did actually lose money on one of them, but that's another story. But to actually say, hey, support me, I was never comfortable with. And then we hit COVID. And I sat there and I had this moment of realization that because I'd been, and it flipped everything on its head, and I realized I wasn't being humble. I was actually being too proud, if that makes sense. And because I hadn't been humble enough to say, hey guys, I need the financial resources to grow what I do. My platform was a fraction of the size of what it could have been when COVID came along. And I sat there suddenly going, how much more of an influence could I have had if only I hadn't had this false humility of not being willing to accept it and actually just gone, yes, I need money because I need to build a team. I'm not God. I can't do everything myself. I'm not good at everything. I need to build a team around me that can plug the gaps of what I'm not good at. And together we can rise far beyond where I ever could on my own. So that's why it's only been in the last 4 months or so that I've really begun to actually monetize what I do in any meaningful way, shape, or form. So I make no apology for it. Here we go. Good people break bad laws. Hoodies, t-shirts. Jump on my Facebook page or on my Instagram. The link tree in my Instagram has the link to where you can buy all this stuff. And Rukshan, I'm working alongside Craig Backman and William and Artist and a couple of others to launch their t-shirts on my platform. So if you do decide that you want to go for it and you want to monetize this so that you can build a team and make it sustainable, I would be very happy to partner with you as well.
Brilliant.
Thanks, mate. I might do like a underwear line or a lingerie line.
Well, that's what Michael Malice does. And then
as long as it's pink. As long as
Michael
it's all
Malice
pink.
then calls himself an underwear model. It's you know, it's pretty awesome. He's one of my favorite podcasters in the US. Maybe you could get over there to see him. But yeah, lots of people are like, well, actually, Paul says undies with your face on the crotch.
Yeah. AK-47 fluffy handcuff line. Perfect. You would sell so many of those.
The Rukshan fluffy underwear line with Rukshan as the model. Okay. Well, now that we're degenerating into something really quite silly now, I will say thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. I hope you stay in a little bit or as long as you can in the chat box because there's lots of people in there that love you both. And thank you once again for joining us on Liberty Chat, Rukshan and Topher.